and welcome to another video from Another Knitted Thing. Today we're going to be looking into leaf lace but with twisted floats instead of horizontal floats. And this is similar to a technique that I've done previously, so if you have seen that video, great. If not, I'll talk you through it. So we can see the twisted floats instead of the horizontal floats on this sample on the machine, and it's where I've reintroduced needles back into work. We are working over groups of 10 working needles and 10 stitches. I'm going to start off in the middle as that is just the pattern that I'm working with at the moment. Using the 2-point transfer tool, I'm going to pick up 2 stitches and move them outside and rehang them on the needles next door, and then push those 2 empty needles out of action and out of work so they do not build up stitches and they're not going to create any fabric on them. This is what creates the horizontal floats. So where you have needles out of action and you take the carriage across, the carriage will work the working needles that are in action, and then it will skip over the needles you have pushed back and it will create a horizontal float on these areas. I'm going to continue picking up 2 stitches and moving them inwards. So we are reducing the number of working needles down, eventually to 2. So again, just remember to push those working needles out of action. I have now changed to the 1-point transfer tool when I've got down to 4 stitches, just to transfer onto 2. And I have totally forgotten to work these side sections, so I'm just going to do that and sort those out with the 1-point transfer tool. So you can see that the working area is now just over 2 needles, and then I've always got 2 needles on the side. When I'm down to this point, I will work 2 rows with the carriage. It just helps even the stitches out a little bit and makes it nice and neat. Now, to rebuild up the fabric and bring needles back into work, I'm going to transfer 1 stitch out across the whole bed, and I'm going to keep that now empty needle in the working position. Previously, we picked up the heel of the stitch below and filled in that empty needle, but we're not going to be doing that this time around. We are going to keep that empty needle in work, and because it is in between 2 working needles with full stitches, that empty needle will create a full working stitch over the course of 2 rows. If I were to transfer the needle out, for example, and I had 2 empty needles in between 2 working stitches, that would not create a full working stitch on each needle because there are 2 empty needles together. It would create a big stitch over the 2 of them, but not individually having needles. Therefore, the rule of thumb for this technique is you must always have 2 working needles with stitches on either side. So working, empty, as you could just see here. And that is the same, that I have 1 empty needle and it is sandwiched in between 2 working needles on either side. If I were to have, again, 2 empty needles here with stitches on either side, that would not create working stitches on those needles. It would just create one big loop and a big mess. So as you can see, I take the carriage across, and where those empty needles are, I now have tuck stitches. When I take the carriage back again, those tuck stitches will form into fully working stitches. So I'm going to transfer needles out once again, and I'm going to leave those now empty needles in the working position. And because they are in between 2 working stitches, whether that's a full stitch or just a needle that has got a tuck stitch on it, it will produce another stitch. So carriage across, and the needles that previously had tuck stitches now have fully formed stitches, and the empty needles have tuck stitches. So now working with the 2-point transfer tool and transferring 2 stitches out, it may look and feel at points that you're not actually transferring a whole stitch, but maybe just a tuck stitch or a loop of yarn. That is fine, because you're still placing that tuck back onto a working needle. So it's that new working needle is still going to act like it has a fully formed stitch on it, especially when it is on the outside of an empty needle. it will work in exactly the same way, and you'll be able to build up stitches on that empty needle. Also remember, as just there, just make sure that if you have an empty needle that you want in the working position, make sure it's in the working position. If it's not and you've just done one row, you can pick up the float and rehang it on the needle exactly as I did before, and that will act in the same way as creating a tuck stitch. It just might be a little bit tighter, the tension might be a little bit off, but it does the same thing. So if you forget to bring a needle into the working position, you can just rehang a float on it. So you can see here I've reintroduced all of the needles. I'm back to a full working area, and I have those twisted floats where I have reintroduced the needles. So I'm going to do this another time, but this time it's going to be a time lapse, so it's going to be a little bit quicker, but you can still see the process. And if you want to slow it down to see it all again, you can slow it down, or you can just repeat the section of the video that I've done before. Basically reducing each working section down by 2 needles every single row, and then reintroducing 2 needles to every working section on the way back up as well, making sure those empty needles are in between a working stitch. It gives a little bit of a lacy effect rather than more of a horizontal kind of striped effect, and it just opens up the knitting a little bit more. So if you're after an area of knit which is a little bit more open, has a little bit more detail to it, then you can use this technique instead of just having the horizontal floats. And it is also actually one that is very easy to create because you are just reintroducing needles as you go and you're just working over the empty needles. So I've cast off, and we will see what this is like and compare the two once I've got this off the machine. So this is the leaf lace with the twisted floats, and this is the original with the horizontal floats. Hope you enjoy it, give it a try, let me know how you go with it.